project management process. You have been assigned a project and a group of people to work with. Now what do? How do you go from the beginning to the end of the project effectively? Successful completion of a project is your goal as a project manager. It's your responsibility to manage it from conception to conclusion. To do so, you should use a process that accounts for all the activities or tasks associated with the project. Whether they're big or small, constrained by scope, cost, or time, it's important to take a structured and defined approach, a systems approach, to managing your project through its entire life cycle. A systems approach outlines all the different elements that involve your project. Since the elements are interdependent, completing one impacts the completion of another, they create a framework when considered as a whole. This framework, the project management process, should help you properly manage a project by identifying the most important elements that need close supervision and careful analysis. Dividing the project into smaller components, while still taking into account their interdependent nature, may make your project easier to monitor and less challenging to lead. In this section, you'll cover the 5 stages of the project management process and tasks you may need to accomplish in each stage before you move on to the next. Let's start with the beginning of the project initiation stage. Initiation. The first stage in the process is the initiation stage. Here, your goal is to examine the feasibility of the project, to define the nature and scope, as well as set the foundation upon which the project will be built. In this stage, ideas are explored and elaborated upon. Additionally, decisions are made concerning who will carry out the project, which party or parties will be involved, and whether the project has an adequate base of support among those who are involved. Some of the questions you should ask yourself during this stage include: why this project? What should the final result be? Is this project feasible? What are the boundaries of this project? Who can I partner with to get this done? In addition to those questions, you should also analyze any needs or requirements. What are you going to need in order to execute the project? Do you have the equipment you need? Are you going to have to coordinate with other base agencies in order to complete the project? Review the current operations. Based on how things currently are, what might you have to change in order to accommodate the project? Duty hours, unit policies. Conduct stakeholder analysis. Talk to those individuals that will be impacted by the changes the project will bring. Are their needs being taken into consideration? Do they have concerns you haven't considered but should? Conduct a financial analysis. How much will it cost to complete the project? Are the funds readily available? Create a budget. Based on the amount of funds made available, what do you need to allot money for? Create a charter. Consolidate all of your important information, costs, tasks, deliverables, and schedule, in one document. Once you have the answers to these questions and perform the above actions as necessary, you should have enough information to create a proposal and submit it for review and approval. Overlooking one or more of these items, or failing to answer these questions during this stage could result in wasted time and effort. What if the project isn't feasible? Or finding out that the project will cost more than it's worth, boundaries aren't established, or final result isn't agreed upon. Oversights could also result in misunderstandings and/or conflicts because those involved in the project aren't clear on these matters. As an example, if your commander is the sponsor of the project, she might expect a working product as an end result, while you and your project team were only expecting to develop a prototype. This misunderstanding on expectations could range from delay in the project, minimal, to a negative impact on your unit's ability to accomplish the mission, detrimental. Therefore, consensus on expectations from all major parties involved is paramount. While coming to a consensus on the final product, sometimes projects tend to expand as other tasks get added on. The sponsor, or other stakeholders, may say, since you're going to do X, you should also add Y onto the project as well. This is known as scope creep. The scope of the project expands, just as a sponge expands when it's dropped into water. As the project manager, you should address scope creep with the sponsor. Start by reminding the sponsor of the original agreed upon scope. However, if the sponsor still wants to add on the new tasks, expand the scope, you should let him or her know the overall time and cost of the project will be impacted. The project cost might exceed what was originally budgeted for, and/or it might take more time to complete the project. After you provide the impact the scope creep could have on the project, the sponsor should then decide whether or not to proceed. The project officially begins once your proposal is approved. Then you can move on to the next stage, project planning. Planning. The key to a successful project is in the planning. Creating a project plan is the first thing you should do when undertaking any kind of project. Often project planning is ignored in favor of getting on with the work. However, many people fail to realize the value of a project plan in saving time and money. The project plan is a document that should be more specific and defined than the project proposal. Its purpose is to plan time, cost, and resources adequately to estimate the work needed to effectively manage risk during project execution. Your project plan should also include detailed information about the tasks, personnel assigned, what needs to be done, deadlines, and expectations. This plan helps you organize and control the project by breaking the overall project down into smaller pieces, providing visibility of ambiguous tasks which might otherwise be overlooked, providing a single point of reference, describing the sequence of events, providing a baseline with which to compare project execution, anticipating potential issues or events in order to mitigate them. The planning stage generally consists of 4 steps: project goals, deliverables, schedule, and supporting plans. Let's begin with project goals. Step 1. Goals. A project is deemed successful when the needs of the stakeholders have been met. Stakeholders may include the project sponsor, customers, or users of the deliverable, the team carrying out the project, etc. It's important to communicate with stakeholders since they may see things you don't see. They provide insights that could prevent you from wasting resources on things you don't need to complete the project. Once you understand who your stakeholders are, the next step is to find out their individual needs for the project. The best way to accomplish this is by conducting interviews with each of them. Their needs and requirements should be considered and prioritized appropriately when defining the project goals. The degree of success in meeting those needs and requirements directly correlates with determining the success of the project as a whole. Once all the stakeholder interviews have been conducted, the next step is to compile and prioritize a comprehensive list of needs. From the prioritized list of needs, create a list of goals that can be measured easily. A technique for doing this is to review them against the SMART principle. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-based. Once you have established a clear set of goals, record them in your project plan along with the stakeholders' needs and expectations. A complete plan is helpful in eliminating redundant work and organizing the efforts of those participating. You must be able to articulate exactly what the project should achieve. Without clear definitions of the goals, it's unlikely the project team will be able to achieve the project deliverables as expected. This leads us into the next step, project deliverables. Step 2, deliverables. Using the goals you defined in Step 1, create a list of products and/or services to deliver in order to meet those goals. A deliverable usually has a due date and is tangible, measurable, and specific. A deliverable can be given to either an external or internal customer and satisfies a milestone or due date that is created and produced in the project plan. A deliverable can be a software product, a design document, a training program, or other assets required by the project plan. Document the deliverables in the project plan and estimate when and how each item must be delivered. More accurate delivery dates will be established during the next step, project scheduling. Step 3, schedule. In this step, you will lay out the course of the project in a logical manner from start to finish and assign personnel and due dates to major tasks. However, in order to ensure your project schedule accounts for all the aspects of the project, you should start by creating a work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure. The WBS is a tool you can utilize to visually represent all the work necessary to complete a project and sets the foundation for an effective project schedule. The goal of the WBS is to organize your project deliverables into smaller, more manageable components. This makes your deliverables easy to schedule, helps you estimate costs, and effectively monitor and control the overall project. However, don't think of the WBS as a to-do list. Such a list would include all the activities needed to complete each task. Example, for task 1.3, you may need to do A, B, and C. Your WBS shouldn't include those items. One final note. Get your team involved in completing the WBS. They can help you identify major tasks that must be completed for each deliverable and help you estimate completion times when drafting your project schedule. Project schedule. An effective schedule is one of the most important tools you'll need to manage your project. It provides a visual representation of all the moving parts and milestones of the project and can be useful not only for you and your team, but also for the sponsor and stakeholders as well. Your project schedule should contain elements such as deliverables and associated tasks, sequence of tasks, time estimated for task completion, start and finish dates, names of those assigned to tasks, resources required to complete deliverable and/or task. Each task within a project should have an anticipated time frame associated to it. However, because some of the risks mentioned above can delay a project, it's important to have extra time built into a project's timeline. Float. Another way to look at float is how many delays, minutes, hours, days, even months, your project can have without interfering with the projected completion date. In simple terms, float comes from adding together the differences between the minimum and maximum amounts of time it takes to complete each task associated with the project. This formula determines the earliest possible and latest completion dates for the project. Ideally, projects should never go beyond the latest agreed upon completion date, and whenever possible, should be completed by the earliest date possible. Effective project managers know delays are unavoidable, so they intentionally build float into their project timeline. In addition, effective project managers never reveal the earliest date possible for completing a project. Instead, they inform the stakeholders and decision makers of the latest completion date. That way, if the project is executed on time, everyone's happy, and if the project comes in early, you become the hero. As the WBS and project schedule define and clarify realistic timelines required to produce the desired outcomes, you may come to realize that an initial imposed deadline is unrealistic or unfeasible. If this occurs, there are a few alternatives you could consider. You might decide to renegotiate the deadline. In this case, consider the project sponsor, the stakeholders, and the requirements that originally drove the imposed deadline and determine if negotiation is realistic and feasible. If it's determined they aren't, it may cause an overall delay in the project. Another possibility would be to employ additional resources. However, you should consider the potential impact of doing so. For example, do you have the necessary funds and/or manpower available to do so? Would additional resources be the most efficient and effective way to address the situation? Maybe you should seek to reduce the scope of the project. With fewer products to deliver, less time may be required to deliver them. These are just a few options that may be considered. Whatever avenue you explore, you should use the project schedule and any supporting plans to justify your intended course of action. Step 4. Supporting plans. The process of developing supporting plans is primarily concerned with the actions necessary to define, integrate, and coordinate all subsidiary planning documents into a single plan. They provide further detail to address key areas identified in the project management plan. Human Resource Plan. This single sheet document identifies the organizations and individuals by name with a leading role in the project. It details the number and type of personnel needed to carry out the project, as well as start dates and lengths of time they'll be required. Your plan should also include the method you'll use to obtain the people you'll need. Example, volunteers, detail airmen, loans from other sections in the unit. Communications Plan. This document lists the stakeholders who need to be kept informed. It defines how, when, and why communication will take place. It should explain what information needs to be communicated, how often it will be disseminated, and the manner in which it will be provided. Clear communication both solves and prevents problems and helps ensure timelines stay on track. Key elements of the communication plan include a brief background for the plan, the stakeholders analysis, the project objectives, the communication strategy, potential issues and risks, budget information. A common mechanism used for conducting communication is a weekly or monthly progress report. Content should include information such as how the project is progressing, milestones reached, and efforts planned for the upcoming period. Risk Management Plan. This plan evaluates the projected phases and the tasks of the project for potential risks. You'll find it beneficial to proactively search for risks throughout the project lifecycle in order to outline mitigation actions for the identified risk. Being prepared to address risks as they surface can help to correct the issues and get back on track as quickly and efficiently as possible. Some examples of common project risks include time and cost estimates that are too optimistic, customer review and feedback cycle that's too slow, unexpected budget cuts, unclear roles and responsibilities, stakeholder input isn't sought, or their needs aren't properly understood, stakeholders change the requirements after the project has started, or add requirements after the project has started, poor communication resulting in misunderstandings, quality problems, and rework, lack of resources. Risks can be tracked by using a log or a matrix. Begin by brainstorming risks before you begin the project, documenting what you will do to prevent the risk from occurring and what you'll do to mitigate the efforts if they occur. It's important to review the matrix regularly and adding new risks as they are identified. As the project manager, you should attempt to determine the likelihood of a given risk occurring and predict its potential impact before it happens. Considering these two aspects together can help determine the priority of mitigation efforts. Once the schedules and plans are developed for the project, it's time to move on to the next stage: execution.